Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the story of one of the most famous symbols on the planet. But you know, the true story behind its creation? It is an absolutely wild engineering adventure. For you students of history out there, or really anyone who's just fascinated by how massive, seemingly unbuildable structures actually get made, this is definitely a journey worth taking. We're going to trace a deeply human saga that is completely packed with radical dreams, massive logistical headaches, and ultimately an unforgettable message of hope. So picture this. Imagine standing in front of a massive colossus rising way up above the crashing sea, holding a torch that literally pierces the sky. Its sheer scale demands your absolute awe, silently sending one powerful message across the water: freedom belongs to everyone. Now, we all know the Statue of Liberty, right? But here's a crazy thought. What if America's ultimate symbol wasn't actually American at all? Consider the wild historical reality that this towering icon started its life thousands of miles away, an entire ocean apart from the harbor it guards today.
Okay, let's jump right into section 1, a monumental French gift. To really understand how this global icon came to be, we have to travel all the way back to the 1860s in France, because this is where the seed of this monumental gift was first planted, way before a single piece of copper was ever shaped. Building this thing was a decades-long journey of dreams and struggles. I mean, it was definitely not an overnight success. From that initial spark in the 1860s, through the chaotic arrival of the pieces in 1885, all the way to the final unveiling in 1886, this was a multi-generational saga. It took unprecedented engineering and just sheer human willpower. The entire massive undertaking actually sparked from the mind of Édouard René de Laboulaye. He was a really prominent French political thinker. He looked across the Atlantic and he saw the United States as this beacon of democracy, embodying values that were inspiring oppressed people all over the world. So he proposed this radical, almost unthinkable idea for the time. He said France should gift America a colossus. Honestly, it sounded practically impossible. Think about it. Funding, building, and then transporting a massive monument across an ocean? No way. But Laboulaye envisioned a permanent testament to liberty and friendship that was meant to outlast them all. So to turn that incredibly lofty vision into a physical reality, sculptor Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi stepped up. He imagined this grand figure of a woman representing liberty. She'd hold a torch high to symbolize enlightenment and grasp a tablet engraved with July 4th, 1776. Basically, he was weaving the whole story of American independence directly into the art itself. But the scale of his vision? Staggering. Bartholdi chose copper for the exterior, using this ancient technique called repousse. This meant workers had to meticulously hammer these massive flat sheets of copper into gigantic carved wooden molds, just to form the delicate folds of the statue's robes and her face. It was a total artistic triumph, sure, but on its own, it was a complete structural impossibility. Which brings us to section 2, engineering a copper giant. Designing a beautiful statue on paper or making it out of thin copper is one thing, but making an enormous figure stand totally upright against the violent, whipping gales of an open harbor, that is an entirely different nightmare. This project desperately needed some engineering brilliance, so they brought in a true mastermind, Gustave Eiffel. Yep, the exact same genius who'd later build the Eiffel Tower. Eiffel completely revolutionized the project by pioneering an ingenious internal iron framework. He designed this massive central pylon of iron and connected it to the copper skin using a flexible armature. This was basically an early version of curtain wall construction. What it meant was that the heavy copper skin didn't actually have to bear its own weight. Instead, it was supported by the iron skeleton, allowing the entire statue to literally breathe and flex independently in the high winds without tearing itself apart. He took the impossible and made it possible. All right, moving along to section 3, shipping across the ocean. After years and years of tireless effort, the statue was finally fully assembled and completed in France. The artists and engineers are celebrating their triumph, this giant towering over the Paris skyline. But, well, that celebration slammed right into the harsh reality of the 1800s. The project instantly morphed into this unprecedented logistical puzzle. I mean, how exactly do you transport a towering metal colossus weighing hundreds of tons safely across the tempestuous Atlantic Ocean in the late 19th century? The incredible solution? Over 300.
That's right, they had to systematically dismantle the masterpiece they had just spent years building. They took the towering statue completely apart into more than 300 individual pieces. This demanded an unbelievably meticulous cataloging system. Every single copper plate, every iron bar had to be numbered, charted, and packed incredibly tightly into these huge wooden crates. Because think about it, if even a handful of pieces were lost at the depths of the Atlantic, the giant could never be made whole again.
Let's get into Section 4, Assembling the Giant Puzzle. Flash forward to 1885. Those hundreds of heavy crates successfully arrived on what we now know as Liberty Island in New York Harbor. But the absolute most nerve-wracking phase of construction was really just kicking off. Workers were faced with a 300-foot-tall, deadly puzzle, and amazingly, they built it without any external scaffolding. Men were literally dangling precariously from ropes high above the freezing, treacherous harbor waters. Step by step, they rebuilt Eiffel's iron skeleton and then riveted Bartholdi's copper skin directly to it, working completely from the inside out. Doing that required raw courage, extreme patience, and just as unwavering determination to see the giant rise. And then came the big, historic day, October 28, 1886. The harbor was absolutely choked with steamships, their horns just blasting right through the thick fog. Cannons are booming along the shoreline. Thousands of people gathered as President Grover Cleveland officially dedicated the statue. And as the heavy tricolor flag covering her face was finally pulled away, the crowd just erupted in thunderous cheers. For the very first time, the world saw the Statue of Liberty in its full glory, an impossible feat of engineering finally standing complete. Now for our final part, Section 5, the Gateway to Freedom. So, the structural engineering is finished, right? But the statue was about to take on a completely new life. You see, the true power of the Statue of Liberty wouldn't just be defined by its massive size, or even Eiffel's brilliant framework. Its true meaning was ultimately forged by the people who looked up at it, from the pitching decks of arriving ships. It became known all around the globe as the Gateway to Freedom. For millions of immigrants completing these long, exhausting, often terrifying journeys, filled with darkness and uncertainty, this colossal structure was the very first thing they saw on the horizon. Looking at this statue meant everything to them. It marked a really profound shift from just being a marvel of iron and copper to becoming a deeply human symbol. It represented a promise of a better life after enduring some pretty extreme hardship. It proved that no matter the oppressive regimes you fled or the poverty you escaped, you had the right to dream, to live freely, to begin again. It stood as a powerful, ironclad promise of a new beginning for millions. Today, the Statue of Liberty still stands tall, holding her torch high above those waters. It's an impossible feat of engineering, built to represent an equally impossible ideal. It was constructed as a message to all of humanity, a message of hope and liberty that has miraculously endured for well over a century now. But as we look back on this engineering marvel, it leaves us with a profound challenge. The torch still burns, but how will your generation keep the message of freedom alive?